We started off Hyper Hippo with one big vision project.
And it didn't land.
And we said in 6 months, let's use our imagination and see what we can build.
Just before Hyper Hippo started, I actually was working at the Walt Disney Company. So I actually left and continued Rocketснell, explored some ideas of what I would work on, came up with this idea called Mech Mice.
I had actually been following Lance Priebe's blog where he was talking about his Mech Mice project.
The truth of the matter is most of these creative people in the world, we only have like 5 or 6 ideas, and we've had them since we're kids. I grew up with G.I. Joe action figures. I saw amazing opportunity with the contrast of mice being introduced to technology and the hard metal of mechs. So you take the most frail of creatures, the mice, and give them unlimited amount of power. What would they choose to do?
And I had been like really obsessed with it. I'm reading every story. Lance's pitch at the time was essentially
Redwall in space!
The grand vision for Mech Mice was to be a transmedia product. It was a book, it was going to be a game, it was going to be an animated series, and it was going to be toys.
We actually partnered with Playmate Toys that did the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles line. They were actually going to build the Mech Mice toys, and we were building the game. I don't know what it was. We thought we were closer to a AAA or something. We thought we knew what we were doing. We were very confident we were building the right game for the right audience.
So we were making sure that the UI was crisp, and we had enough content, and everything looked dialed.
we sort of fired everything into the cylinder and shot it out, and it didn't land. And so we couldn't even say exactly what had gone wrong.
We spent a lot of money. I'm always quite public about it. We spent close to $5 million building the game. It generated on launch less than a couple $1,000. That's a complete absolute failure.
When Mech Mice collapsed, it left a giant hole at Hyper Hippo, because that was what 95% of our activities were about.
We just really opened up to where we're at. This is it.
And I just remember so clearly that meeting when they pulled us all in and said,
A decision had to be made. What were we going to do now? Do we shut down the studio, which was a real option?
and Lance was really great about it. He basically said,
We still have time. We still have money. We still have the ability. What are we going to spend it on? Build anything you want. Get feedback as soon as you can. Our opinion no longer matters.
We said in 6 months, let's use our imagination and see what we can build.
I'm a musician, and if somebody was like, we'll pay for studio time for the next 6 months for you and your band to go write whatever record you want with access to every instrument, I'm going to make the record for my life right now. This is that opportunity.
I had no fear in that moment when they told us. I just remember very vividly thinking, like, I've always wanted this kind of shot.
I remember Cody actually telling me later, he felt so freed because it's going to take 6 months and just take the wildest risk you can and find something.
If they made a movie about this, you probably wouldn't believe it because it sounds so contrived. But I just remember being so like, this is the shot, like this is the moment. I just remember having clarity and enthusiasm to make that 6 months work.
A bunch of us went out for beers that night. We were all kind of like, formulating this social contract. You're coming back tomorrow, right? Yeah, I'm going to give this a try. Okay, well, I'm coming back too. And it was awesome to see the next day we all came in. It's like, okay, everybody showed up.
Some thought, well, gee, I get to work for 6 months and just play. Others were very much thinking about, no, actually, this is 6 months that could change our lives.
Things were just humming in here. There was an energy, there was a spirit of, we're going to do this. Like, we had a lot of people who wanted to solve this problem.
We had some money left in that runway of the $5 million that was already committed to create this company. We had it available for us to spend and make something out of it. So that's where I had to rally the team, and they were excited.
It's literally like, let's aim for the lightning in a bottle scenario. Maybe we'll make something so big and so grand in our garage that it'll find, 100 million people to play it. That was the story that we needed to enact for ourselves. The feeling was that it was a 1,000,000 to 1 shot, but that would make the best story. That would be the greatest outcome of unlikelihoods to happen.
Now, the part of the story that's not told is that we blew through the whole $5 million before the end of the 6 months.
As long as it hit the brand, as far as it was something that was accessible to all players, there was nothing else that was really like, that's the right game or the right genre or anything that kind of dictated on that.
Anytime an idea sort of even partially appeals to me, I'll pitch it. And I come up with some weird stuff sometimes.
I remember him saying that idea had come up and then it kind of just been in the back of his brain for a long time, but he always kind of wanted to do it.
At the time, I was playing a ton of Cookie Clicker. It's this very simple idle game. where you click a cookie, and you make more cookies, and then you spend those on things that make more cookies, and it's all cookies. A programmer had sent us a file which basically just showed us a bunch of progress bars, and it was like, pick one for your game. They had taken the liberty of adding buttons to start them so you could see them progress. And I would go click, 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 click. The fast one would go fast, the slow one would go slower, and the really slow one would take a really long time. And I was sitting there clicking these progress bars, and I was like, this is really weirdly cathartic. Progress bars as this soothing experience and this weird idle cookie mechanic. These two things kind of mashed together in my head. So I was like, progress bar the game.
I think everybody got up and had a game idea, whether they whiteboarded it or they had a deck ready and they've been, dying for this chance.
I definitely remember Cody originally pitching it.
This game is going to be all progress bars, and you can't fail. There's no game over, and there's basically no graphics.
I would say that pitching a game can be difficult.
I do remember qualifying it a little bit and just being like, okay, hear me out. Progress bars.
Okay, everyone, including myself, said it's a dumb idea and we don't want to make it.
It didn't pitch, right? It's like, it's cola, but none of the fizz and none of the flavor. And you're like, I'll pass. It sounds like water, but thank you.
And then, him pitching it and nobody being like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And so, so it didn't happen. We had other prototypes.
We came up with probably 15, 20 different prototypes that were made.
We had phrase shift. We had angry villagers.
The monkey one where the monkey climbs up the beanstalk. What's that one called again?
I Eat Bananas. I loved playing that addictive little game.
We had prism break.
The other one I really liked because all of us would play together was Janky Tanks.
In the game industry, like 1 in 100 games might work. And so we were just getting through that process as quickly as possible.
The day that progress bars was proposed, nobody wanted to do it.
And knowing that no one wanted to build it is actually what led to what happened next, which was...
He made the humble request of, would it be all right if I spent 2 weeks learning Unity?
So what was fascinating and funny about the story is Cody's a writer. He doesn't know how to program.
And so I spent the next 2 weeks watching YouTube videos on how to program in C#. That first prototype, I was literally like playing for like 5 seconds and rebuilding the Unity build because I would tweak one thing and go back in. I finished the prototype to my satisfaction, and I sent it off. Here it is, first prototype. Let me know what you think.
It was like a really simple prototype that he had made, just buttons and text. And I definitely played it. Played a lot of it. Everyone played a lot of it.
I was working in a hallway in the office at the time. I was in earshot of every room. And so there was this incessant clicking.
Click, 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 click. I get up out of my seat and I wandered around, and sure enough, everyone is obsessively clicking my clicker game.
Literally productivity nosedive. It was almost like, do we apologize to Cody? Do we fuel his ego?
And the next thing we knew, we had people who were addicted to their own game.
Yeah, I think it was addicting. Getting to see the numbers go up. I think everyone knows now that that's a seriously good feeling, especially when it's dollars.
My older brother plays no games. I showed him what we were working on. I had to ask him, well, let's go for lunch now. And he'd say, yeah, okay, just a sec. I just got to keep going here. And then I asked him again, and then he said, no, hold on a sec. I just got to go a little bit further here. Here was somebody who had never played a mobile game before in their life, and I couldn't get him away to lunch.
After I started watching everyone play it, I was like, this is the game. So you're at that terrifying moment as an entrepreneur of, we're actually out of money. But this shows something. What do you do?
Venture capitalists hit a few programmers before we got to our launch candidate. Every one of them added something to the game.
Everybody starts extrapolating the vision, like, well, what if we dressed it up? And what if it had an achievement system?
Everything from the offline to progression to like the art and all this kind of stuff.
One of our engineers, Paul, at the time was the one who pitched offline accumulation, right? Which wound up being a core component of Idle.
I would say that was like our first real pioneering moment was the offline progress.
From that point on, it was like a dream.
All of us were doing this for the first time. We didn't have a playbook that said this is the way that you have to launch a game.
Our goal was to get the prototype out to Congregate as soon as possible. It was pretty hideous and pretty shallow.
We had been putting out 15, 20 prototypes that would maybe get 100 people a day playing the game. And I said, Cody, you had 38,000 people play your game this weekend. He just about melted it to the ground.
We were looking at audiences of 5,000 as feeling good. So going to 30 was...
Like 1 million players showed up. We're like, oh my God, this is gonna be huge.
And we were just watching it continuously jump and jump. We'd go home for the day and come back the next day and be blown away.
What? We went from 0 to 25,000 people every day playing this janky web prototype? Okay. We had a little bit of overnight success on Congregate.com. They reached out and said,
would you spend more money to get the mobile version? And we're like, that's outside the budget.
What we don't have is time and money. What we have is a need to get to solvency as quickly as possible. We took them up on their offer. We basically rolled the dice.
The timing of getting onto mobile seemed to be long.
We were pretty much ready to go mobile in November. Unfortunately, at that time, featuring was a very major aspect of a game launch.
I remember there being tension in the office about why is this taking so long? But that was the goal, was that we were going to get this feature, and that's why we needed certain steps.
So those were a long 3 months when you're sitting there from November to February, not knowing what's going to happen when you go out on mobile.
we didn't have Moon, Mars. We didn't even have limited time events. We're like, put out the core of the game and we'll see what happens.
And I remember watching the monitors, looking over shoulders like, what's going on? How are we doing?
And I remember somebody in the office hit refresh and they're like, we got it.
We were blown away that we were one of the 3 icons on the main screen and the cover picture. And that's really, really rare at that time.
That day I posted on my Facebook page that it was the biggest day of my career because we were on the top banner on the App Store. It was pretty exciting.
And we had 3 million downloads on our original featuring. It just blew our expectations completely out of the water.
We had no idea what to expect. We were like, okay, is this good? What does high score mean? Did we break it?
The moment we got that feature, it was like, this is a different game we're playing now.
We have to become like mobile live ops aficionados yesterday.
We really did have like a moment where we sat down with key stakeholders in the project and said,
What else can we do with it? How do we get a broader reach for it?
It wasn't that long ago when we were not sure if we were going to have Hyper Hippo necessarily anymore, right? So all of a sudden we have this game that's right on the front page and we're like, wow, now what?
Sometimes we listen too much to what people say not to do versus just trying it.
I remember pitching Steam to the team and they're like, we're not going there. That's our grounds for real gamers, Tristan. We're not going there.
How does this translate to a Steam audience? You think Steam and you were thinking more of like the intense, big, giant games.
I think that launching on Steam was the time that I was most afraid.
We kind of thought we were just going to be like booed off the stage, sort of.
There was many who thought that we would be shredded, and with good reason why they thought that.
The whole team hated it, and then Cody and I were riffing on like, well, what if it's the second screen game? Like the game you play while you're waiting for other games to load, or
In between better games, play Adventure Campus. And we were very self-deprecating and it just worked.
We refer to it as sort of as lightning in a bottle a lot because the success that it got seemed to be never ending. It seemed like we could do no wrong with that game.
The game was exploding. They were about 3 months behind in some of their Google reviews. Tickets had stacked up to almost 10,000.
there's an audience that cares, that wants more. We're on stage. We're building the plane as it's in the air, and we have not set ourselves up for this.
When you launch the game, you finally hit the starting line. Now you got to make it fresh for players all the time.
How can we just sort of like recreate that first time feeling, right? Like watching a movie for the first time again. Well, let's just make the main game, but a 4-day version of that.
We'll theme it differently, different art, different sound.
Tristan would lead. We just have a big old whiteboard.
We focused around special holidays,
Especially ones that are more capitalist in nature. And then we would really lean into that.
Valentine's Day,
The Halloween event.
a Black Friday event.
A Christmas event. Part of the event was that you could collect these candy canes, but there was a bug in it originally where the candy canes wouldn't stop spawning, and so people were sending us screenshots of their like entire screens full of candy canes.
Tristan was writing all the stuff on the board, and he was just like, okay, events this. What are some of the businesses that we're going to have? Grey poop on a stick. And he was just like, that's so stupid. But we kept going back to it and like, poop on a stick. Ended up staying in. Thank goodness.
Testing an event, so there's definitely a lot of making sure that progress bars worked. Sometimes they wouldn't. A lot of the times there would be assets that would just be missing.
I lost so much sleep. When you launch something that was not good, that maybe something like, oh, there was a bug, didn't see it, and it broke the build. But like the knowledge that hundreds of thousands of people were disappointed.
6.2. The day after we released 6.2, it was so quiet, and our player support representatives were like, yeah, it seems to be going okay. And then the next day, the storm happened.
Support was getting hit harder than ever.
The game's not saving on the moon. The game's not saving on Mars. This thing's completely broken. Ads aren't working. Everything broke. Everything broke so bad.
Poor Chica, like I remember probably bringing up a bug every single day for 3-4 weeks.
And I think we did like 500 patches before it got to a point where it was okay.
A casual game of that nature, they last a couple years and then it would be done.
You just don't think that something's going to stick around for that long.
Maybe this is the last year we work on ad cap.
I certainly remember the conversations about sunsetting the game.
Which was a real option.
So we started off Hyper Hippo with one big vision project, and then learned we weren't listening to the audience. We didn't get feedback. One of our values is player first, and a lot of that doesn't get talked enough. What player first would mean is we're here to build a great experience for the player.
The longevity of Adventure Capitalists, more than anything, has validated that approach. This game is soft. It's meant to be like a plushie or something that you can just hug and feel good about, right?
It's all about listening to the audience, and if something's not important to them, don't bother with it.
It's funny just how much of an emotional connection you can create with your fans, even through something as silly as ad cap.
In the video game industry, we're a lot more like running a submarine. A bunch of crew, we're in it, we're under the water, we actually can't see anything, and we're using all our equipment to sonar and everything, our retention, our data, our analytics, everything, to figure out where we are in the water and to make a choice, to make a move forward. And it's a lot of times it's actually discouraging and sad because we don't see our fans. But when you do get to see them, it's so exciting.
There was one super fan. He knew the game inside and out.
John was actually one of our Steam players, and he was really, really, really into AdCap. He pretty much updated all the wikis.
And he could really help us with giving us details on hey, this thing feels a little hard, or this thing's not quite right.
We actually ended up making an avatar of him right in the game as a manager.
We mixed him with Neo from The Matrix. We called him Johnny-O. What was his last name?
Johnny O. Anderson.
Oh man, that guy was a legend. I can count on probably two hands these fans that just sort of understand maybe even the appeal of what you've made better than you do.
It's amazing going to conferences and stuff and how many people run up to you and know what Adventure Capitalist automatically is.
GDC 2015, that was a new experience for me in the entertainment industry because I was there, Lance and I walked around the floor together, and we had this vest on. All of a sudden, the crowd would gather around.
They just come right line up. They're so excited to show their phone and their progress.
Wow, Adventure Capitalist, can I show you my game? And then you go a little bit further on your way back to your hotel, and then you'd have another crowd come up at the next corner.
Idle went through a renaissance because of our team and what we were willing to try.
It was Apple who actually came up with it at that point. That was the first time that I had seen Idle as being a description that they used as sort of an industry standard of what this genre was going to be called.
I know that there were other sort of clicker games, but I think this is sort of the first one that had that mass appeal because everybody loves money.
It has made everything else possible that we're doing right from the beginning.
They were pretty much at the brink of kind of closing the doors.
We sort of had this 6-month ultimatum where we needed to find some sort of audience, and we did.
Adventure Capitalist at its core is like a magic 8-ball for dad jokes and puns. You shake it up and then you read it and you go,
Grey poop on a stick.
wah, wah.
I like to say that I'm the creator of it, but the truth is that there were so many people involved to make it a success.
Take the skills and the leadership of somebody like Tristan, and then you take the horsepower of people like James Brotherston and Kevin Yockey, and the artwork of Cale Atkinson was just out of this world.
Thank you to anybody that played the game, anybody that spent time enjoying it. Even if you hated it, thanks for giving it a look.
Gosh, thank you for everything. Thank you for changing my life. Thank you to everyone that made the game better. Thanks to everyone who played the game. AdCap
has been the story of how we went from our own really rags to riches experience as Hyper Hippo.
I hope it's brought some joy to you. It's meant a lot to me, and it'll forever be one of the proudest accomplishments of Hyper Hippo. So thank you.